Welcome in, Sunday Night Roundtable. Titans just lost 31-20 because our third down defense still sucks. We are brought to you by BroadwaySportsMedia.com. Go check us out. We have articles, we have podcasts, and I can promise you a lot of those articles and podcasts are going to be talking about just how bad this team looks because they don't look good. I actually started this show clean shaven, and then I watched the game, and now I'm so stressed out I look homeless. I am joined by Justin Graver and Jonathan Boren. It is the three of us here to help console you through a really, really bad Titans loss, 31-20 to the Bengals. And the Bengals injuries gave the Titans every reason to run all over that offense, and the defense couldn't get it done. Boren, where are we? Why are we here?
Well, I think the most frustrating part of this entire thing is it's not like this team has just been running over people and then the defense, just had a bad day that showed up. The frustrating part about this is that it's been building. Everybody's been watching this happen week after week after week, and it finally comes back to bite you. And what makes it worse is it's against, you can say what you want. And I agree that of 1-5 teams, the Bengals are a really good 1-5 team. That said, they're a 1-5 team, and you want to be one of the best teams in the NFL. You want to be that team that can actually go win a Super Bowl. You can't lose. That should be you call it a get right game for the Titans. The only team that got right was the Bengals, and they're 1-5 now, 2-5.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous how you continue to see the same thing happen over and over again every single week, and you thought the Titans defense would have a chance to do something against this offensive line that at the last second, Michael Jordan, starting left guard, ruled out for the Bengals, probably their best O-lineman, definitely the best one that was going to be available today, and still not a single sack on Burrow. They had that one play where 3 guys missed him and they almost brought him down, but you can't get any pressure on a quarterback. I mean, Burrow does a good job of sidestepping like little in-pocket pressures and stuff, but if you can't move him off the spot, you can't actually affect the quarterback, then defense is going to stand no chance. His cornerbacks are atrocious. I mean, it's like watching Parrish Cox and Bleedy Ray Wilson running around out there. They're just as bad. The linebackers in the run defense keep getting blocked up the field. They're not coming downhill at all. You see every single replay of a big run by the other team. You see 54 is locked up on some big lineman driving him back down the field. It's just, I don't know what you do. You're at a point where you have to make wholesale changes this week. I mean, you can't continue to do what you're doing because it's just the worst.
The thing is, you can't make wholesale changes. Nobody makes wholesale changes in the middle of a season. You don't have the ability to do that. Do you have the ability to go out and make a trade at one position? Maybe. The problem with this is that the Titans, you can say what you want about Adoree coming back, but I was saying it in game during the game. If Adoree makes that big of a difference to this team, then the Titans should be embarrassed as a coaching staff because, yes, he may be the greatest corner in the NFL. He's not. But even if he was, you can't let one player affect your team this much. The example I use, the Steelers lost their quarterback last year and managed to adapt and almost make the playoffs. And there's not a more important position in sports than the quarterback. So if you're going to put that much emphasis on the cornerback and you can't put up a better effort than this, that's embarrassing from a coaching staff perspective. That's embarrassing from a front office perspective for putting you in this position. So there are answers to be had all around.
Graver is directing traffic because apparently we have incoming while that happens. Billy Sierra throws up, where is Rashaan Evans? Why so much regression from a third-year guy? Let me throw that out there as we welcome in Ryan.
With a sick hat.
With a very disgusting hat. Rashaan Evans, Graver, regression. What's going on with him? He's muted.
Yeah, it's just rambling. He's looking like the third down defense. No answers.
Whoopsies. No answers. None of us have answers for anything. Rashaan Evans. Man, it's not. How much of it is a regression is my question, because he hasn't ever really been a super quick processor and click and close kind of guy. He doesn't really trigger that fast in run defense. Like, he's aggressive and he'll hit the hole hard and hit a pulling blocker with his shoulder and throw him out of the way. And He's great in the red zone. I mean, really good on the goal line, but he does seem to be worse this year. I don't know what the deal is. Is it change it position coach, inside linebackers coach? We now have Jim Haslett in the building. I don't know how that's affecting things, but I mean, it's definitely concerning across the board. It's concerning. Everything's concerning.
I don't think Evans has regressed that much. I think this is exactly who he has been. The problem is that in the past, the Titans have been they've been able to hold up on the back end enough that teams would actually try him in the run. Because here's the thing. I don't think we have the chance to really see Evans, whether or not he has regressed, because teams other than the Vikings, nobody's actually tried them in the run game. They don't need to, because the book is out on the Titans defense. It is find the corner opposite of Malcolm Butler. And I see the comment in there is like, Malcolm Butler was the best player on D today. Well, Malcolm Butler may be the best player on D other than not named Jeffrey Simmons on the year. I think Clowney's up there too, but Butler has not played bad. But teams just go out there, they say Butler's over here, immediately target the other side where the guy is playing 10 yards off. And the most depressing part of this for me was the very first play they came out and both corners were lined up 11 yards off the ball, just like they were last week, which means they came in and they said that what they learned from last week's game plan was that, hey, they just didn't execute well enough, which I agree there's some truth to that, but they didn't make any changes. They were going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's work Ryan in here. Ryan, welcome in. Appreciate you joining. We've got a comment in chat about it looks like it's defensive. It's got to be defensive. We have to make a change there. Do you agree? I mean, I'm sorry, defensive coaching.
So I agree that season 2, episode 1 of Mandalorian was fantastic, and that's all I'm prepared to talk about. I'm just kidding.
Cut his feed off.
No, at some point in time, you have to question whether it's the coaching, because there has been some serious decline throughout the year in some players. There's been some questionable things. And like we've said a couple times, there's been a few different moments. We say if the front doesn't make a splash play, then it's big chunks of yards. It's convergence over the top. So you're relying on a lot of these things and players to execute. At some point in time, you've got to be able to help those out and scheme some things. It doesn't seem like there's any of that going on through the coaching staff. And I know that you're talking about not having defensive coordinator, but now I'm questioning whether the position coaches are in the right spots and teaching the right things.
Josh Jordan puts in chat, Jonathan Joseph needs to be gone. I'd be fine if they left him in Cincinnati.
But the thing is that
today.
Yeah, I mean, the team values the ability to come up and tackle, so they're willing to give up catches to come up and tackle. I tell you, late in that game, I don't remember the exact drive, but I think it was Tate or AJ Green caught a pass at about 2 yards, and rather than coming up and tackling, he chops his feet and lets the receiver just drive for the first down when they needed stops. That's if there was anything else, not getting these jump balls over you. Cool, you don't have the athleticism, and that's what the Bengals receivers do. They're big bodies; they'll go up, but that's going to happen. But not showing the aggression to come up and make the tackle short of the sticks in that situation, I think the Titans, frankly, on defense, especially in the secondary, I think there's a physicality problem. For a team led by Mike Vrabel, they have a physicality problem.
It's that lack of aggression you mentioned across the board. We see it. I mean, we see it from the linebackers. It's like something we harp on every single week. We see it from Kevin Byard, even in the open field. Like, I know you don't want to come forward and overrun the tackle, and you have to break down and tackle with good form so you don't let the guy run right by you. But in this instant you're talking about with Joseph as the cornerback in the flat, the cornerback has to fire at that guy.
Exactly.
And the other team, let your teammates come make the play if you are only able to hold him up briefly. But I mean, you have to just wonder where the aggression across the board on the defense is. It's like they're playing scared to be beaten, every single player except for maybe the front four. But even then, I mean, what they're doing, and they take inside pursuit angles and leave the edge wide open, which is that's the one time we want you to not to get beat. But I don't know what to even say.
I love the chat right now. He doesn't do that. Correct. That's literally what I just said. He doesn't do that. So yes, I did watch the game. Did you watch the stream? Thank you for joining.
Let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball. Derrick Henry does crack the century mark in rushing yards, but the Titans lose. So there goes that undefeated chant that Titans fans love to run with that does not correlate today with Henry going over 100 yards. Offensively, the Titans looked, I don't know. I don't want to use the phrase out of sync because I get so tired of seeing that. But Tannehill didn't look completely on his game. Corey Davis had several big catches. What's going on offense, Brian?
Well, Tannehill's looked kind of out of sync 2 weeks in a row now. Last week he was masked by some things, but when you go back and watch the film, he missed some open routes, especially late, that could have led to some big drives, especially on the 3rd and 13 shot to A.J. Brown. Humphreys was breaking wide open across, much like the Kansas City game last year, and that could have been a big play. And today, it just seems like he's off. He's not seeing the field. He rolls to take a risk. He always looks to fit into tight windows, but he's not seeing the field. I don't think he's seeing his secondary routes as he normally does. He's becoming too reliant on something like A.J. Brown. Corey Davis stepped up today. I know A.J. had a better second half, but here's my big problem is that I have been a big league, whatever. I've been very impressed with Art Smith and his ability to be creative and kind of balanced. And today it was obvious from the get he needed to not be as creative and just run the ball down the middle. I mean, there was times when Henry was getting 8 yards at chunk, and those types of things you have to think to yourself as offensive coordinator and say, all right, this is working. Let's break this play. Let's run this till it breaks. And then your backup running back comes in. Foreman is breaking off 8-9 yard runs. So it's just they got a little too creative cute and creative down towards the red zone when they should have just been pounding it in. And it's one of those things where, Justin, I think you mentioned earlier in the day, and maybe it was the halftime show. Forgive me, there's a birthday party going on around my house today. But that early touchdown instead of interception, this is a much different game. And the Titans kind of looked shell shocked from the start. They kind of came into this thinking, this is a lesser team, we should walk all over them. Well, I'm not so sure right now that the Titans aren't the lesser team the way that they're playing on defense in certain spots. And your offense has a big strength where you need to be running the ball. That's what they should have stuck to today and done more of, in my opinion. The film may tell me otherwise, but that's what my feeling is just watching this game live.
And when you talk about Tannehill being off, even on some of his the team's best plays today, like the passes were not well thrown. A.J. Brown had to reach down to near the ground to almost scoop the ball off on a couple of plays. The Corey Davis touchdown, like he was more open. He shouldn't have had to make such an acrobatic, insane catch, which was what a freaking play by Davis there. But
yeah, can we just what was the ref looking at? He immediately calls incomplete pass and then gets mad at the other ref coming and telling him that he's wrong. At least
I just love.
What the heck was
I
that
tweeted it
about?
out. I love the way Davis reacted to that, looking at the ref like,
You can wait to watch.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
He wasn't like mad, like, are you kidding? He was just like, no, you're wrong, you idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you bring up a good point. This is the first mention. I don't know how long we're into the stream, but this is the first mention of the refs. And I do think that's going to be a very hot topic for this game. And let me say a couple of different things. One, the Titans 100% deserve to lose this game with the effort that they put forth. Mm-hmm. There were some absolutely atrocious calls, the main one being that pass interference penalty at the end, which just was one of the worst calls I have ever seen a referee make. It was absolutely terrible. Now, you can talk. There were other calls throughout the game that I think were questionable at best.
Ben Jones had a holding call.
Absolutely. So I just want to say, the Titans deserve to lose this game because guess what? You shouldn't be relying on a in the final 3 minutes interception from Jayon Brown to give you a chance to get back within one score of a 1-5 team. That should not be required. That said, the refs were terrible in certain spots there.
Yeah, they're not the reason the Titans lost the game, but they were definitely an eyesore in the eyesore of the game.
I mean, there's no putting it lightly. The Titans were absolutely screwed on that particular play. Like you said, the effort overall didn't deserve to have them come out with a win, but that was absolutely inexplicably awful. They didn't even read a number, let's say a number for a player for who the penalty was on. The flag came out after the ball was picked. Any competent referee should be able to tell when the ball that is hit or tipped before it gets to the receiver. I don't understand how that play was called, and we got some comments in the chat about the Humphreys play where there was no call as well.
Yeah, it's a bang live. I saw it live, thinking, "Oh, great catch, took a shot there," and then he's not moving. I was like, "Oh God, no!" Because that goes back. I have some history with my football playing days and neck injuries and everything. My mind always goes first to those things. I just want to see, as a human being, I don't care who the team is, who the player is. When those kind of fits happen, I just want to see the human being move. So I really wasn't paying too much attention to whether the refs got a call wrong. I'm sitting there thinking about Adam Humphries and hoping I can see some movement, hoping that he gets up, which he did, and I'm thankful for. Now we can go back and talk about the shot. Absolutely should have been a penalty. Should they have definitely seen it because it was going down? It was kind of bang. I don't know. We're relying on replay, right? We have that benefit. It's easy to see on replay. You got to remember how quickly this happens in the moment.
And I'll say this, and I want to put this out there, even though it's not going to do a damn thing to change anybody's mind. But you can be upset about individual calls and still not have that reflect being pissed off about how the Titans played.
Right.
Titans Twitter is really, really bad about you're using this particular bad call to blame for the Titans playing bad all day. No one is saying that. Now, there are people who do that, but we do not do that here. You can be upset about officiating and be upset about the fact that the Titans play terribly. I want to throw this out there. The Mike Vrabel press conference is going on as we are recording. Vrabel says, on the issue of not having a defensive coordinator, I am positive that is not a factor. Do we agree with that? I got to laugh at this comment under it. Someone said, oh, okay, cool. I totally feel better about that now.
Well, and this is something that I've been talking about the last few post games, which says something like, hey, coach, this is the reason you're getting these questions because it continues to be an issue. This isn't a 1 week thing. But whether it is or isn't, he can't get frustrated at that kind of a question because by not hiring a defensive coordinator, you're opening yourself up to that questioning. You had to know that coming into the season, what you're leaving yourself susceptible to. So if that's not the problem, well, guess what? Your defense still is a problem regardless of the reason, and you know that you left that open. So if you want to use it even as an excuse, use it as an excuse. That's fine, but you got to be able to fix it. And so you can't be surprised that question is going to come. If you're not going to hire a defensive coordinator, you better have a damn good defense.
Let's pretend that they name Bowen the defensive coordinator for the season. It starts. Okay, let's just pretend, make up that they gave him the title, and they're still playing like this. The calls, I think what this alleviates is the calls are to fire your defensive coordinator at this point in time, but I think you're still in the same spot you are where you can't have a quick fix. So, I mean, I don't think hiring a defensive coordinator now does anything. This is a preseason problem that not bringing someone inexperienced in that can do this. And I think that they just don't, either they overestimate, they don't know. I'm not sure, but the talent isn't matching up with the play calling and what teams are doing to the Titans, because it's all out of sync, and it's making for these teams that are decent on offense look really good, and the really good offenses look like just absolute legendary studs. It's a frustrating thing to see, and I agree with Jonathan there. You open yourself up by not taking care of this in the preseason, because at least if you said Bowen, okay, you have an inexperienced DC, then your calls are to fire him. But now you're just like, well, you don't have a DC, so we don't really know who's the leader and who's the shot caller. It's you're opening yourself up to ambiguity.
Before we go to that Vic Beasley comment, I want to talk about, is it scheme or speed? It's both, but there's a lot of defenses in the league that don't have near the talent that the Titans defense has that make it work, with patchwork secondaries, with injuries in the secondary, with Devin Bush goes out for the Steelers and they hold the Ravens to 24 points. The Colts have had pretty deficient talent in the secondary for like 3 years now, and they make it work with their fairly simple, but they would play it well with their zone defense that they run. So it's a little bit of speed. The speed is bad. Joseph is slow. Chris Jackson is slow.
They're all slow,
but they're all slow except for
that's the problem. It's a position where it's the most athletically dependent position on the field. You can't get around it. And when even Butler, who I think is playing okay this year, I think he's partially he's playing better because teams don't even bother throwing at him. But especially after Fulton goes off, you have no athleticism out there. Yeah, they're all these good football players, which I get there's definitely something to be valued there, but you have to be able to put some sort of athletes out there that can compete with the athletes that the other team's putting out there. I don't know who you're putting out there to go fight these jump balls. I think Jonathan Joseph played the jump balls he got beat on as well as he is capable of doing. He's just not physically capable of defending those at his age anymore. So there's plenty of issues with Joseph, but those are the ones he just physically can't do, but they're still trotting him out there.
DJ Hollywood City's got a comment up, and I want to kind of make this into a two-parter. Titans should move on from Vic Beasley, but also want to throw this out there. Our own Jimmy Morris, who tweeted out, why did we spend so much time this offseason caring about where Clowney was going to sign? So I have to point to these two, starting with Vic Beasley. Is it time to call Vic Beasley a bust on this team? And B, I want to kind of go back to Jimmy's comment. Should we have really given a shit where Clowney was going to sign? Has Clowney made the impact that we thought he was going to make, which is a flat fucking no? But let's kind of start for that two-piece with Vic Beasley. Are you pissed off about him being here? Are you pissed off that he's on the team? What's going on with that piece?
So I guess I'll step in here first. In a lot of my breakdowns I've been doing, I actually thought Beasley came on last week. I thought that he showed a lot of improvement and granted, he's not making the impact that you thought you were going to get to by signing the $9.5 million for this year or whatever you thought. And a lot of this, there's a lot of things factor in. Is it scheme? Is it this? But yeah, the production has not been there throughout the whole season, but it's one of those things where I thought he was coming on last week, and this week this whole defense kind of took a step back. You didn't even have the splash plays out of the defensive front that you're normally having when Simmons and Jones and everything. So I'm real curious to get to all 22 to see if anybody was accomplishing their assignments and all this stuff. But with Beasley, I don't. If you move on, then you're basically saying you just want to sink the $9.5 million and say, okay, then don't step on the field. Well, who steps in for him? You traded off Carrera, and I mean, Roberson's been inactive, not playing. I don't know who you go to at that point in time. Maybe move Evans down for middle linebacker since he's not doing much there. See if he can rush. When you say move on, do you mean just cut him? Because I don't see the point there. But yeah, if you're telling me, should he be doing more? Yes, that's an absolute yes, he should be. So I'll leave it at that with Beasley and let someone else step in before we go on Clowney, because I do have some thoughts there too.
Yeah, my thoughts are this kind of the same thing. Is like, they can't move on from him because they don't have anyone else. And that's how I feel about Clowney too, is maybe Clowney hasn't lived up to the hype that you hoped for when you signed him. Obviously, he has no sacks. But, I mean, there were a number of plays in the second half of this game today where Clowney was using his little hesitate swipe move and getting in the backfield immediately, and he wasn't the one making the tackle in the backfield. He was forcing the running back into traffic and helping kind of clog things up. That was impactful in the game for sure. And my biggest thing, I said this last week, is who the hell else would have been the outside linebacker if the Titans didn't sign Clowney when they did the last week before the season started? Who the hell's lining up outside linebacker? You have no one else. There's not a single other option on the team. So you have to have Clowney, even if he isn't the player, even if he's overpaid, he's not the player, not exactly the impact you hope for. You can't not have him because there's nobody else on the field.
Quickly, I'll throw this out there. Someone throws a comment up. It's letters and numbers. I apologize, and I'm not pronouncing your name. Sign Earl Thomas and Clinton Dix and just line them up as corners. I'm not going to speak on Clinton Dix, but Earl Thomas, let me say this. The Ravens cut Earl Thomas after he got in a fight during practice. There was obviously so much shit going on there behind the scenes. They wanted him off the team and took that opportunity to do it. He showed up, was it in Houston, and did a walkthrough, and they just told him no thank you. So
this isn't a train convention.
This guy's got something going on. He's not going to show up here and do anything other than being a damn distraction. So let's just move on from that.
Why not give Roberson a chance real quick? Yeah. I don't know what the deal is with Roberson, because he has been active, but he's been in and out with injuries and stuff.
Today.
He's been active for one game.
He's been active for one game. So I mean, give him a chance that he can't get on the field. So I mean, yeah, I mean, if he was out there to be played, sure, give him a chance, but he hasn't been.
Here's my thing about that makes it more of an issue that they don't have Roberson out there. Now, I will say Vrabel definitely said that, they need to be able to contribute on special teams, him and David Long with this week. So obviously they are not doing that. So that's probably the reason that he has been inactive. But the way they're using Vic Beasley they've gotten to this point where they're playing him for more snaps, but based on how they used him early on, it's one of those where they didn't necessarily want to use him outside of very specific pass rush situations, which even if Roberson is that same kind of guy, Vic Beasley obviously is not having the production that you want him to have. I think you have two different issues with Beasley and Clowney. Clowney, I think, after watching today, that dude is allergic to finishing sacks. Like, there's no way around it. Like, he finds a way to not get the quarterback on the ground, but he still disrupts the play. And he is disrupting a lot of plays in the run game. He is still making an impact. If you want to make the argument it's not $15 million worth, I think I'd agree with that. Vic Beasley, though, I mean, he did force a fumble. He had a nice game last week, but it's I don't know exactly how much more of an impact he's having than Derek Roberson would have, even if Roberson is a liability in the run game and special teams.
Ryan, I know you had some Clowney thoughts. Why don't you get into them?
Yeah, I think that, I wanted to see if Jonathan and Justin would touch on him. They did. I think that he is being productive in a way, and it's just not showing up in the stats. But at the same time, it is frustrating to see him get the free rush that he got today and finally taking advantage of the matchups that you've been hoping he can take advantage of. And he did it today, and he can't come up with a sack. And that's just inexcusable to me. He does have to make those. He's frustrated and stuff. I get that. But my thought is that he is making plays. He is contributing. Is it worth his contract? I don't think you can really compare it to his contract because it's a 1-year deal. Broncos are always going to be kind of a shot. Let's get him in here, and they're going to be what they are, right? The price wise, so you can't really judge it there. You have to see, is he contributing? And I think that of the defense, he's one of the main contributors. He's been fine. He's been good. Yeah, the stats aren't showing up, but at the same time, he's causing disruption, allowing Jeffrey Simmons to be able to make the plays that he's making and making other players. So I have no idea what's going on. But anyway, that's my thought on Clowney.
You need to know something about me. I'm easily entertained. Okay.
Yep.
So I also don't have a way of muting my mic without clicking on the screen and potentially fucking stuff up. For the gentleman named Simp Biscuit, thank you very much. What a phenomenal name. I apologize. I'm not going to read your comment because I agree John Joseph should be walking home. Simp Biscuit, congratulations. You are the best name I've seen today on social media. I want to go into two topics. First one, Titans trades. Are there any available that you feel like would make sense and that the Titans you feel like should be going after?
So I'll jump in first. I mean, the one that's out there is Gilmore. And while I think the idea of Gilmore is great to bring him, it's still going on this. Are you Lebowski? Like I had to say it.
I'm sorry, I'm like a cat with a laser.
In the middle of the halftime show, I had to bring it up last week. Like, let's go to this comment from Periscope. Oh yeah, Simp Biscuit. Yeah, no. But Stephon Gilmore is one of those guys like, yes, he is I think he's still a great player. He'd help the defense, but if you bring him in, your chances are you're losing Butler or you're losing Adoree next year, because it's one of those that either you're trading something to get him for just this year and you let him walk. You're not keeping all of them. So I like the idea of Gilmore, but I don't think that the Titans are in this situation like the Buccaneers or whatnot, where they have a 1-year window. Yes, they should be competing for a Super Bowl this year, but I don't think they're in a position where you have to sell everything just to get in this year. I think they are a relatively young team at the important positions. Don't just forego the future for this single year, because I don't know who you trade that I would go into a game and say, hey, you can beat Patrick Mahomes. Like they're just not there.
Here's the thing. It feels like a trade at this point. It almost feels like getting Adoree Jackson back at this point. It feels like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. And what I mean that is that I'd like to see some changes in the scheme first, or at least, at the same time, because I think that's going to help more than anything else. Because you can bring in two more talented guys out there, and sure, it may help, but I don't think you're going to be able to pay for or get the talent that's going to make that big of a difference. So you can just run the same scheme and expect different results. I would like to see a scheme change and mix things up and get a little creative and be a little reckless abandonment on defense and try to just say, you know what? We're coming after your ass, all 11 blitz. I'm kidding, but we'll live with the results. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I don't think one trade fixes what's going on right now. There's just too many holes across that secondary. The pass rush, Burrow didn't get the ball out especially quick today. I thought he held on to it. He held on to it longer than Big Ben last week for sure. It was quick-ish. It was 3-4 seconds, but there's nobody making the first move that's getting in things. What I'm saying is you're not having just these overwhelming just immediately beat this pass rush needs that spin move, needs that secondary move to get there if you're just relying on the front four. Now, if you want to get creative and bring some depth pressure, that's when you're seeing some of the quick pressure, like the Clowney pressure, came from depth, and he was able to take advantage of a hole in the pass protection. More of that, please.
When it comes to the trades, I just feel like, I guess if you're rooting for a trade, today is a good day for you, despite the loss, because it will push the Titans hopefully in a direction that makes them say, can we get it done with this team? But I agree that they don't have just a 1-year window, but there's a semi 1-year-ish aspect to this window. He's got Clowney on a 1-year deal. He got Beasley on a 1-year deal, and you have no future at the edge position in terms of youth outside of Harold Landry, which is just one player. And I mean, Roberson's a nice piece, but he can't get active for the game. So like, you can't count on him. There's nobody else, on in terms of long-term defensive pieces, how many do they have right now? I guess Kevin Byard, Adoree Jackson, and Jeffrey Simmons, right? So I think there's some element of 1-yearness to it, but I don't think they're going to make a trade, because I think it's not I think they're stubborn, but I think that they are confident that they can correct the issues that they're having. It just seems uncharacteristic of Robinson and Vrabel to say, you know what we need is an outside presence to come in and save this defense or whatever, which is what it would feel like.
Well, one thing about trades, though, is that, look, if a guy's available for trade, there's a reason he's available for trade. Teams generally, unless you're the Jaguars, don't trade good players for a reason. So either they're locker room cancers, they've underperformed, those kinds of things. Stephon Gilmore, he's been great, but he hasn't been as good as he has been in previous years. Is he on the downturn? So are you trading for a guy that may be on that downward slope? Those are bad trades. And frankly, there is something to be said of don't trade with the Patriots, because there's a lot of history there of you don't do that. If Belichick's willing to part with a player, he knows when the guy is washed. Exhibit A, Steven Gostkowski.
So let me start with you, Boren, on this next part. What's your biggest concern going forward for the Titans?
Stubbornness. It really is one of those things where, look, I really do think that this is a team that on offense, they have prided themselves on being this physical team. And you even saw it today, where they can just pound the rock and don't make it any more difficult than it needs to be, but they got a little cute on it. But on defense, just watching the way the corners play, and I get that they don't want anything over the top and anything like that, but Malcolm Butler right now, outside, and I'm talking just corners, the safeties will definitely come up and hit you even illegally if you're Kenny Vaccaro sometimes. It's one of those where the corners just are not physical. They do not come up and make tackles. They are hesitant to attack, and you can't do that and also be lacking in athleticism. You don't have the athleticism to make up for it. So the coaches have to adapt, and based on what I've seen over the last few weeks, I'm not sure if they're going to, and I'm not sure that they know how to adapt to it. So if it was me, that would be my biggest concern.
Graver?
My biggest concern is that it doesn't seem like the team is getting better, and in fact, it feels like they're getting worse, which is the opposite of how you want to go. And it's not just because they lost 2 games in a row, but they have looked actively worse in each of these 2 games. Against the Steelers, that was the worst the defense looked all season, and they were able to luckily force those turnovers to keep things close. This week, they weren't able to do that. They had one chance at it, obviously, that was flagged and negated. I didn't even talk about the fact that before Corey Davis's touchdown, Tannehill threw back-to-back interceptions. One of them barely hit the ground. It didn't count. And one of them didn't count because they threw an offsides flag. So thank goodness for that to happen, or else it would have been an even worse disaster of a day on offense. So it just feels like both sides of the ball aren't improving. And Mike Vrabel talks about this a lot in his press conferences. The best teams at the end of the year are the ones that improve throughout the season. And unless this team starts to show improvement, it's going to be a long road. I mean, they're not looking like the potential 12-4 team that they were a couple of weeks ago at this time when they had a chance to go to Pittsburgh and be the only undefeated team in the NFL. The only silver lining here is that last year through 7 weeks, they were 2-4 and they were horrible. And so
you're calling for a quarterback change.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there it is. Gardner Minshew.
So, I mean, they turned it around in the middle of the season last year, and it wasn't all Tannehill. I mean, Tannehill was a huge part of it, but like the offensive line came together and started playing better. But what about, is this potentially going to end up being a lost year because of Taylor Lewan's injury and the defense's inability to match what the offense can do and like provide them any support, and the errors on special teams? Like, it could be one of those years where you just end up, fizzling out early in the playoffs because things just don't come together for you.
Yeah, you hush with all that, Justin. Ryan, go ahead.
Biggest concern. That's my biggest.
Cut him off.
So I guess my biggest concern is, if you look back to it, I think I said it last week or in one of the shows. Where'd he go?
Cut himself off.
Was that I think that I said that this, a few things break the wrong way, and this is only a 2 or 3 win football team. So my big concern is, what if this has all been a big facade, a big lie, that the Titans really aren't that good of a football team, and they're able to just squeak through these wins because they were actually the ones getting lucky, and they're not as good as we built them up to be. I don't think that to be true based on the talent that you have on the field, but at the same time, they're not executing at times, and they're causing some big risks to winning football games, especially here of late. So my concern is that continues, and then we'd be thankful for 9-7. So I want to see next week some improvement, because you've got some big divisional opponents coming up. You don't want to keep playing like this, and you have to get better at some point in time. But I'm worried that we've been lied to.
I just love, real quick, I just love that the Titans fan base is able to unite behind the idea of a 5-2 team will find a way to go 9-7. Like I've seen it so many times. Like it really has brought this group together.
Oh, our own Bill Superhorn had that. What I thought was the tweet of the day. It didn't seem to take off. It said entropy to 9-7. Don't fight it. I mean, that's exactly what's happening here. It feels like the Titans are on this retrograde burn back into the atmosphere that you are not going to stop. But I got to say, my biggest concern after last week, I was willing to give the Titans a bit of a pass because the offense got it together in the second half and made it a game, made it winnable. But this week, I really feel like the Titans defense has shown that it has some massive bleeding wounds, and it doesn't appear to stop. And I think if you're a Titans fan, it's perfectly fine to have some serious concern now. I mean, last week we were still talking, this could be, 13-3, 12-14. I'm starting not to feel that way now because suddenly you realize that it's kind of hard to have a shootout when your offense can't move the ball either. And while Cincy is a better team than they look like with their record, Pittsburgh is a better team. And somehow the Titans took a step backward this week. So that it's perfectly fine to be seriously concerned if you're a Titans fan.
Can I just say, like, the stat that we may look back on, and I know everybody has thought that the pass rush is a problem, but the fact that you go into a game against Cincinnati, who is literally not starting a single offensive lineman that they started on week 1, and you don't get a single sack despite your best efforts, that's pretty laughable. But I will be the silver lining. Here's what the coach in me says. It is almost impossible for a team to be hot throughout the entire season. You never want to peak early and then fall off late. Now, if you want to be the Debbie Downer, you can say the Titans did peak early and this is already the downfall. That said, there's going to be a blip somewhere along the way. The Chiefs did it last year. Get hot going into the playoffs. So thinking that this is, the end of the season or anything like that, look, if you want to, statistically speaking, you're going to have a dip. This may be the dip. Turn it around, and this team is still talented enough to make a run. But it also could be just the downfall.
I'm at least going to hit the panic button on the pass rush because I really was expecting. I was expecting more out of this game from what I analyzed and what I saw, and the fact that I thought that there was going to be that extra juice from this defensive line or the defensive front. It just was not there. And it just that I am panicking a little bit on that. Maybe not overall for the team, but there especially I am. Yes.
I think this defense, it may not be the very worst defense in the entire league, but it's certainly the most underperforming defense considering the talent level.
That you have to sit there and wonder if they're as bad as the Jets and the Cowboys and the Seahawks. Isn't that a problem in and of itself?
I mean, they are as bad as the Seahawks. They're not as hapless as the Jets, and they're not as completely terrible as the Jaguars just because they have more talent in the Cowboys.
People are having to make those comparisons and say, well, what about this team? That you don't want to be close. I mean,
can you make an argument? Can you make an argument for them? And you absolutely can make an argument for them to be
the third down defense is decidedly the worst in the NFL, and it's not close. So that is a place where
either, though.
Yeah, it's not. It really isn't.
Well, I will say Titans next 4 games: Bears at Titans, Colts at Titans, Titans at Ravens, and then the Titans at Colts. So, I mean, the Colts just improved to 5-2 today. And these suddenly look like some nervous games coming up. The Bears are 5-2. And if we're going to sit here and talk about, teams that are not as good as their record, this was one last week. I was saying the Bears are not as good as an actual 5-2 team. Well, the Titans just dumped a shit-ass game to the shit-ass Cincinnati Bengals. So, half shit-ass, but whatever. And I'm upset going into this Bears game now that the Titans have some serious, serious problems.
I think the Bears are a terrible team that are disguised by their record, and unfortunately, I'm not sure I can say much different about the Titans right now. And that's that.
The battle of the
It's like the biggest difference between the biggest gap between the team's offense and the team's defense in this direction in franchise history, right? At least since they moved to Nashville.
So this is, you don't make the mistake of going into the Bears game like everybody did against the Steelers, where everybody said, "Oh, how is this great Titans offense going to match up against this great Titans or great Steelers defense?" No. Let's look at, in this situation, the Bears offense against the terrible Bears offense against the terrible Titans defense, and that's what's going to decide the game.
Something's got to give.
Yeah. Something's got to give. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for us today. I would like to throw out again, Scent Biscuit, one of the best names I've seen in chat in a while. Thank you for entertaining me, the very easily entertained idiot on this show. Again, we are BroadwaySportsMedia.com, articles, podcasts. Come check us out. You can rewatch videos like we did today, and we hope you follow us week to week. Come check out a premium membership. For Justin Graver, Jonathan Boren, Ryan Watson, and whatever the hell he's holding up, I am Michael Gillum, and we're out.